Happy Lunar New Year from producer Bacon and I. What better way to ring in the new year than with a rundown on Hare? He's a fan favorite and he's a sneaky little scamp in the anime. In-game, however, he sits a little less on the scheming side of the fence and prefers to just break stuff.
It's just one of those days.
He's a kung fu master with Koei Tecmo's best jiggle physics since Dead or Alive. He hits hard and fast and makes sure the funeral is closed casket. So come along with us as we do a deep dive down the rabbit hole and figure out what makes Hare tick. Hare is a beginner-friendly monster with a unique stat line. High power and speed is really rare on a main breed monster in Monster Rancher 2, and this allows Hare to have a focused gameplay style for new players. Glass cannons are pretty easy to understand. You boost your power, you boost your speed, and bam.
Baby, you got a stew going.
Hare's middling skill is patched up nicely by a slew of techs with incredible accuracy, meaning its only real weakness is on its defenses. 15 guts rate is below average as well, but is it actually enough to slow down the bunny? Hare has the unique basic setup of having both its techs in slot 3. 1-2 punch is an inexpensive chip damage tech with incredible accuracy. This is a staple of every Hare's game plan, which is fortunate because, it's a basic tech and you have no way of removing it. The long animation time is a double-edged sword, as 1-2 punch rolled down multiple times with a huge guts lead is often enough to run the clock in your favor, even if it doesn't straight up KO your opponent. It can just be a bit too much of a tempo loss if used a single time mid-match, allowing for your opponent to build up a guts reserve. It's a move that when used at the right time is incredible, and when used at the wrong time, it basically gives your opponent an advantage. And Hare's other basic is the notorious Gas, an intelligence tech with low damage offset even more by the fact that Hare's main attacking stat is obviously power. Gas is often never what you want to see your Hare doing, but honestly the numbers aren't actually that bad. 7 force is not good. It's not good, but is pretty accurate, and it can wither for 12, so it's actually really good in anger. If you're gonna go with an intelligence Hare, you could probably do worse, to be honest, especially when, as it turns out, Gas is Hare's closest thing to a nuke on the intelligence side. Hare doesn't have a lot of intelligence tech, so we're gonna shake things up here and mention them first before we get into the Kung Fu. Foul Gas withers a lot for an extremely cheap cost and an incredible hit rate, but it does no damage, which usually makes a tech completely useless. Hare's fastest guts rate is 12, making this basically a more accurate version of Pixie's Kiss. But the crazy thing is that this tech actually sees some competitive play for two reasons. One, it helps Gas cover up 1-2 punch, which is a complete liability on intelligence builds, and two, because it synergizes incredibly well with Hare's final intelligence tech. Stinking Gas has the distinction of having no stat requirement on it other than a bad nature, so not only is it not actually a chain from Foul Gas or regular Gas, it's extremely easy to get first on air entry if you'd prefer it over Foul Gas. Stinking Gas is unironically a pretty powerful tech for withering, but it does even less damage than regular basic Gas. Plus 13 hit means it's also Hare's most accurate intelligence tech, which is, in a field of pretty accurate attacks already. None of these techs are very good on their own, but they all work together to put into play a decently powerful lockout strategy in certain formats. But only certain formats. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the intelligence build breakdown. None of these are generally good techs once you consider Hare's slow guts regen, even if they seem to do the thing they're supposed to do pretty well. Hare's a martial artist and has a ton of different punches and kicks at his disposal. Straight is an incredibly accurate hit tech. 20 cost for 15 damage is never really an impressive stat line, but the astronomical plus 20 hit and a bit of withering make this a staple on most Hare builds. It's noticeably stronger than 1-2 punch, but it's still best used to finish off a low life opponent. Hard Straight is a logical upgrade to Straight. It basically swaps the hit and force for 7 more guts, which makes it decently expensive for Hare, but this is often just a straight up upgrade over Straight with no real compromises. Plus 16 hit is still incredible, and honestly the drop from 20 isn't noticeable most of the time. This is one of the best techs Hare can pick up. It's got everything he's looking for to close out games. Backblow is a really high efficiency nuke kept fair by its insanely low hit rate. For 19 costs, it's not free, but almost B-Force does a lot to make this tech pretty solid for those who are willing to take a bit of a risk, since it doubles the damage he gets from Straight. This is a theme for all of his heavy techs. They're all pretty cheap and spammable given the potential payoff, you just need to be willing to gamble. Rolling Blow is the same cost as Hard Straight for a 40 force tech, which again, is actually pretty risk averse in the grand scheme of things given the nature of the tech. Just like Backblow versus Straight, this tech is twice as powerful as Hard Straight, with the trade-off of it having 30% less chance to hit, which is that's not good. Rolling Blow isn't a common pickup because Hare would usually rather spend those guts on consistency, but sometimes you just want to bonk stuff. Hare's got some messed up tech chains. They're more like tech trees. And the first split here is on Smash. This also changed from Backblow, and it's sort of like a riskier, pure damage focused version of Backblow. While they're similar, Smash does more damage and has parameters lower across the board elsewhere. Usually people go for Backblow if they have the choice, but that's more so because Smash's main boon is enabling our next tech. Heavy Smash is Hare's most powerful tech, and it's his least accurate. Minus 19 hit is horrendously bad. There's only a few techs in the game that are less accurate, and they all instantly win if they land. and also Tasty Banana is here. 56 Force is close to impossible to actually defend against, and it's a great win condition versus tanks. 33 Guts on Hare's Guts rate means you usually get one shot at it per game. It's incredibly risky and is rarely seen in competitive, but it's not like Dragon Combo level of unusable or anything like that. Hare just has a ton of options and not a lot of guts to throw around. Hare has a lot of sharp techs and they all actually have incredible critical hit rates. Lots of the time sharp techs need a crit to even approach being worth their guts cost, so approaching 50% crit chance has got to be a bonus, right? Well, Kung Fu Fist is a lesson in tech viability being hard to vet at first glance, as despite solid numbers, it may be Hare's worst power tech. It's significantly above the curve for a lot of sharp techs, it's just that at -9 hit, there's other stuff Hare would like to gamble on instead. This usually ends up being a less impactful back blow, and ends up bloating an attack range that has a handful of significantly better options. Kung Fu Blow has seen some competitive play, but it's also kinda rare. I think given the guts cost, this was meant to play as a halfway tech between hard straight and rolling blow, but it really just kind of functions like a heavy tech that doesn't feel heavy without a crit. Most people avoid Kung Fu Blow, but it's not like irredeemably bad. High Kick is similar to Kung Fu Blow, but it trades a bit more cost for a bit more consistency. It's also in slot 2, which is usually used for your audibles and doesn't have anything as imperative as hard straight in terms of pickups. If you want to use Kung Fu Blow, consider using High Kick instead. Spin Kick chains from High Kick, or no wait, it chains from Kung Fu Fist. It makes sense if you think about it, as long as you don't think about it too hard. This is the second of Hare's weird tech trees. It's basically a higher damage high kick with more sharpness that has the downsides of this being his most expensive non-special tech and requiring Kung Fu Fist as a prereq in slot 1. This maybe ends up being the tech that sees the most competitive play specifically because people think it looks cool and less about the numbers. But I mean, the numbers aren't awful. It's just mostly used for the aesthetics. And for special techs, first off we've got Kung Fu Kick, which chains from Spin Kick, meaning it's the final in a chain starting on Kung Fu Fist. This is the tech Hare's famous Dragon Kick in the anime is based off of, and while it's a lot less cinematic here, I noticed for the first time while collecting footage for this that there's a little fireball on his foot when he takes off. It's pretty cute. This is the logical upgrade from Spin Kick. It keeps the high sharpness and boosts the withering and force with the trade-off of being really expensive and risky. But that said, Kung Fu Kick's biggest strength is not actually numerical though, as it's in slot 3, the same slot as Hare's basics. It reduces the chance of gas being used at all and can actually be a good way to stop Hare from accessing 1-2 punch out low guts. Lots of people have horror stories of losing with their Hare because he won't stop 1-2 punching when he's at a huge life deficit. Kung Fu Kick isn't anywhere close to Hare's best tech, but the additional utility is worth experimenting with at least to see if it works for your bunny. The Bang line is up next, and it's Hare's answer to the 1-inch punch. Bang is a very strong use of 45 guts, especially compared to the Kung Fu Kick we just looked at. While not particularly powerful on the damage side, this tech is exceptionally accurate for an archetype like this and has really high withering and a little bit of crit to offset the initial cost. Bang is usually a necessary pickup and helps make slot 1 even stronger. Big Bang is usually Hare's most impactful tech. This is kind of like Gel's Gelcopter with a cut to force in exchange for double the withering. While 50 guts isn't something Hare always has the opportunity to spend, it's one of the best all-purpose techs in the game. Tanks hate him. Speedsters hate him. Doctors hate him. Find out how to make top 8 at your next tournament with this one weird trick. Hare's best power builds mostly focus around close quarters combat, which whether intentional or not, ends up being thematic. While he has a modular moveset and can run a bunch of different builds, the most common ones are these. This build forgoes Hare's special techs in exchange for consistently being able to attack. This is just a well-balanced build that can deal with both speedmons and tanks, but can have issues using the wrong tech at the wrong time. This is Hare's expensive damage dealing build. Kung Fu Fist is like the Monster Rancher equivalent of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Garnet. It's there and it helps facilitate the build, but you really don't ever want to see it used. Kung Fu Kick is similar and can be completely omitted from the build if you don't want to bother risking it. And this is the most common Hare power build. Lots of stuff going on in slot 1, but it's all good. You get a mix of high damage and high accuracy at a pretty solid point for consistency. When people talk about Hare being one of the best monsters in the game, this is the build they're talking about. For intelligence, well, there's really only the one build. You get all the gas attacks and you hope for the best. This build has seen competitive success in formats where Hare can run an effective evasion tank, which is usually relegated to extremely low stat caps where people can't max out their skill without giving up a ton of damage potential. The lockdown on this build is completely obscene and can beat lots of builds that usually don't stress about withering too much. That said, it usually loses if Hare takes a single hit. It's a strong gimmick, but in more consistent stat caps, it doesn't really have much chance of victory. Fairy Hare and Leaf Hare are the fastest guts rate Hares at 12, putting it just above the average rate of 13, but on the lower end of the spectrum for competitive builds. This isn't really quick enough to run an effective tank, but Hare's stats line up for speed better anyway, so the ease of use option also happens to be the most competitively viable. In the original Japanese Monster Farm 2, Fairy Hare had the absurdly slow guts rate of 255, which rolled over to a 1, making it 6 times faster than Metal Nerve. This amounts to 30 guts per second. Unfortunately, this would be the only real way to make Intelligence Hare viable in all metas. I went up against Koei Tecmo's secret weapon in preparation for last year's Koshin, and despite the guts rate being monstrously overpowered, it turns out that a solid min-max still wins you the battle. Hare's got a lot going on for it, and it's one of the most consistently powerful monsters throughout all formats. It has issues in matchups with heavy incidental withering like Joker, but it has a slew of options to beat all opponents. Despite its size, it's safe to say that Hare is one of the top 10 strongest breeds in Monster Rancher 2. Just like the new year itself, Hare is a monster who brings hope to its trainers. It's sometimes a scrappy underdog, but it's always got a real shot at victory. Thanks for watching another rundown. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you're enjoying the new year. Hopefully you enjoyed the Deluxe Cup. We got more tournaments coming up very soon. If you want to do any of that, follow me here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. You can join the Discord. I always post when stuff goes live. I'm live 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/moosebones. And if you want to see what I'm working on before everyone else, then the Patreon's there for you as well. I really appreciate any and all support, even just watching and dropping a like or a comment is fantastic. And next month we got something a little bit different, so I hope you are excited for that. Until then, I hope you have a good one.